Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're carrying on with our Act 6.3 guide and we're going to be taking a look at Quest 5 with the annoying Mysterio boss. The World for the People is the name of the quest, and yeah, let's just jump right in it and check out what are the paths. As always, there are 6 paths in this quest, just like any other quest in 6.3, and let's start off with the first one. And the first path is a Rage, Mystic Ward, and Force of Will. So you can't negate their ability accuracy. Mystic Ward, you make sure you can't negate their buffs. So that means that those Rage Furies are likely to stay there, basically, and you're not going to be able to nullify them. However, at the same time, this is a kind of funny one because the health pools are so huge that vast majority of the champions simply do not trigger rage. So you are perfectly free to use any champion and fight as normal. So you want to focus much more on countering each individual champions. Because with health pools in play, to trigger that rage limit of 2.5%, basically you would have to be hitting at about 9k. So long as you avoid these huge burst damage champions and pretty much bring in anything you want, avoid huge special attacks, those furies will never be up there, they will never go unblockable, and you have pretty much nothing to worry about. So you might not want to use some really heavy hitters, but other than that, everything goes. This is not a difficult lane. It's actually kind of funny that they put rage on such a massive health pool fight. And yeah, other than that, it's a fairly easy path. It's not the easiest path, but it's nothing too tricky there either. And yeah, overall, I think this path kind of fails the purpose it was designed to do, and yeah, you don't really have to worry about rage too much. Next path, Pleasure to Burn, got a light down to Determination, and this is another path that kind of defeats the purpose of it. So Pleasure to Burn basically makes sure you have to have an Incinerate on opponent in order to do any kind of meaningful damage, but got a light basically kind of make sure whenever you keep hitting opponent, they will have that Incinerate. So once again, you can use any champion whatsoever. Obviously, there is Power Shield on this node as well, so champions that do hit hard or are able to spam special attacks will be preferred. I think I just kind of went through most of it with Ghost because, yeah, there is no kind of reason to have Pleasure to Burn on if you're gonna have that got a light node, because that means any champion can place Incinerate debuffs on the opponents. And once again, it's made into a relatively vanilla, fairly straightforward, easy lane that kind of nullifies itself with the main nodes that it already has on. And yeah, so any champions work there. Just keep in mind the Power Shield, spam the special attacks, and you'll be fine. So that means we can move on to the next path, and next path is one of the annoying ones. So it's long distance relationship, immunity to bleed, and that cramping. Basically it means whenever you have that weakness debuff on yourself and you land a hit an opponent, you're going to take damage back, plus so long as you have weakness debuff on yourself, you will be losing a lot of power, and it is a quite annoying node to deal with if you're not prepared. However, overall, there are still plenty of great counters for it. I largely just used Quake and Namor, because Namor reflects all the damage back, and you don't have to worry about that global node whatsoever. In fact, you get an increase in your damage output, quite substantial one. Omega Red also works fantastic for this type of nodes because you don't take any passive damage with your medium and heavy hits. I think Aegon would be great for this as well, because as soon as you build up the combo, you can kind of forget about the node because you're going to be shrugging them all off immediately. I haven't tested the Aegon yet though, but overall you can kind of play around this node with most of the champions, just staying clear of the weakness debuffs. And for the most part, you're not going to have too much of a problem. However, there are definitely a few champions that can do exceptionally well, such as Namor, such as Quake, which are the main two that I used. And additionally, you have some special boost available for this path, designed for this path, but it's kind of interesting because there's actually more than one boost that work really well for this path. First and foremost, let's take a look at this tech one. And basically what it does is whenever you fill a bar of power, you kind of purify all the non-damaging debuffs, and if the defender has more power than you do, then that extends to all the debuffs. So it's going to be kind of a decent way how to stay clear of all of those weaknesses. You still kind of have to be careful though, and meanwhile not to land a hit with that debuff on, kind of like just as it gets freshly applied. But another boost that's not really meant for this, but I think works even better, is this live intel for all the skill champions. And what it basically does is that as soon as you start the fight, you have a 12-second kind of like passive effect on you that you refresh every time you land a critical hit. And that makes you immune to all the passive damage you would take when you land a hit. So overall, you can pretty much absolutely ignore that node, that crumbling node. Only downside is you still will be losing power because you have the debuffs on you, but on the upside, you will have access to willpower heal at all times. So any champion that can play without special attacks reliably is going to be fantastic, and this skill boost is going to work absolutely amazing for you for this lane as well. But now I can move on to the next lane, and it's Caustic Temper. And if Caustic Temper isn't enough, they have that terminal velocity node that each time you land a critical hit, opponents gain a huge increase in their power gain, and you have spiked armor, everybody's favorite thing. So this is one of those lanes that nobody wants to do. It's really annoying, and there are pretty much no great matchups to this. I remember myself doing this with Quake and Heimdall synergy, just because then we can ignore the terminal velocity, Caustic Temper, and spiked armor. However, by themselves, there is not a single champion I think that is really amazing for this path, just because that spiked armor damage is absolutely insane, and the terminal velocity gives them so much power. I tried to do a single fight with Hyperion, and it just wasn't gonna work. Every time that spiked armor got me, I lost a huge chunk of health, and terminal velocity made sure they get a lot of power really quickly, and they ended up at level 3 basically in no time whatsoever. So yeah, it's a really tough lane. And yes, then I started thinking for possible solutions, and outside of Quake plus Heimdall combo, I only figured that Guillotine 2099 might be a good option here as well, because she doesn't crit. That means she doesn't trigger doesn't trigger spiked armor or terminal velocity. Additionally, she has ability to utilize that synergy Warlock has with Ultron or Vision to gain a Fury buff there, or she can gain a Fury buff via Heimdall synergy as well. And Guillotine 2099 should do fantastic for that lane. Other than that, it's the only two champions that can realistically take on this lane, I think, without the special boost. And once again, I think this node is a huge fail in design, because it's pretty much unrealistic unless you're using the boost that they are kind of like forcing you to get. And I heavily dislike any parts of 6.3 where that is the case, where you're pretty much forced and strong-handed into using these boosts that they have decided. But yeah, so here is the boost, Marvelous Metabolism. And it works on all Cosmic Champions, and what it states is basically whenever you would be poisoned but you are immune, you gain a Fury buff, increase your attack rating for 20% for 6 seconds. Additionally, while this Fury is active, you cannot land a critical hit, so that will protect you from that extra power gain they might be getting when you crit, and it will also protect you from spiked armor damage because you will not be critting. And it works for all Cosmic Champions, so you need to look out for Cosmic Champions that are poison immune, and that's it, you're good to go, because Caustic Temper would try to poison you 50% every time you land a hit, and this boost will give you the Fury to unlock your damage, basically reduction from Caustic Temper as well. So yeah, any Cosmic Champion that is poison immune plus this boost will work for that lane. Additionally, there really are not any other proper counters outside of Guillotine and Quake, plus some extra synergies. And then that's it for this lane, and we can move on to the next one. And the next lane is this Safeguard Clap Back and Cornered node. So basically, again, this is pretty much made pointless node combination, largely because of the health pools, because, okay, Safeguard limits your damage output to 1%, which is still going to be like 3.5k, so who cares? Like, you can just completely ignore all the nodes taking any champion, the fights might take slightly longer, but realistically, with the health pools that you have to face, they were going to be long anyways, and there is no real kind of practical need to try and get around it, especially because of cornered and clapback, making it even more annoying. And yes, there is special boost available, and that helps you kind of get by it. But again, any kind of technical ways to get around this is the defensive ability accuracy reduction champions and stuff like power sting. But realistically, there is absolutely no need for it. Taking any champion, ignore those nodes, take a few minutes longer, but at least you're going to be using the best champions, the champions that you like to be using, not something like forced. And yeah, you're just going to clear that lane just fine, maybe slightly longer. Remember, clapback and cornered, so don't try to debuff the opponents and basically bring in whoever, because once again, it's kind of funny because that safeguard hardly matters on these health pools. But anyways, so the special boost that we do have available here affects all the science champions, and what basically says is every time you perform a well-timed block, you have a chance for each non-damaging debuff on a defender to land a power sting debuff, which is a really strong power sting of 220%, and this power sting damage would bypass the safeguard as well if you would go over it. So basically any science champions that can inflict non-damaging debuffs would be able to take advantage of this boost and get some extra damage in. But once again, it's really not needed. It's yeah, because the health pools are so big, you might as well just use the best champions that you have available and ignore that safeguard node and just take slightly bit longer to finish it. And now that leaves us with the final boss, which is Mysterio, and this is regarded by many probably the most annoying boss here. And so let's go over his nodes and the best counters that we can think of. So first and foremost, he has tunnel vision, which basically means if you perform the same action twice in a row, you will get a falter debuff and that attack will miss 100%, and then that debuff goes away. So you do need to switch it up. You do need to do like medium, light, medium combos, so on and so forth. He also has Matador on him, which means that only way you can gain power is whenever he throws a special attack, you gain a bar of power, and that's about it, which actually in this matchup is quite much more annoying than you'd think, because ideally, typically in a Mysterio fight, you want to bait out his level 2s. However, that will power drain you, and that will result in you pretty much hardly ever have any power, or you are forced to bait out level 1s, and then you can actually access your special attacks. But level 1s are a bit trickier to evade, and that is one of the first hints I'm going to give you. If you want to take on this guy, go practice evading his level 1 and work around his level 1 much kind of like more accurately and better, and then this fight will become easier with many champions. But anyways, then moving on to the following nodes. Armor break immunity, which means you cannot shatter his helmet outside of Spider-Verse champions. Enhanced visibility, basically he gains a 50% power gain while his helmet is active, so it's going to be all the time unless you're using Spider-Verse champions. And toxic behavior means if you do not bait specials aggressively enough, you will have a poison debuff placed on you whenever he gets 3 kind of like those gas passives that he has. And yeah, so that pretty much makes up this fight. Obviously, we all know that Mysterio is quite an annoying guy to face off by himself, just because you can't really punish his special attacks. Level 1, he has that phase where he absorbs all the damage and then reflects it back. Level 2, there's a chance to miss. And combination with the tunnel vision, it's a really kind of technical fight. The champions that I did best with here definitely is going to be Nick Fury. Nick Fury can solo this fight relatively easily, just because once you go into the second phase, not only you do insane amount of damage to Mysterio, you also cannot miss, so that means you can absolutely ignore the tunnel vision node, and you can in fact use it to heal via willpower. Also, you can safely punish Mysterio after level 2, and it's just so kind of easy and quick to get him down. But you do have to have that kind of like good setup and transition, and you need to be able to evade Mysterio's level 1s properly if you want to actually get to the point where you can utilize all that unblockable ability Nick Fury has, and his ability to ignore phasing and invisibility effects. Other than that, I have seen Hyperion do extremely well with his Furies and being poison immune, so you are in no rush to kind of like bait out his special attacks. Even though you do not have access to your power, still those Furies can add up to some really good damage. Captain America Infinity War, especially if you have skill champion in your team, because then you can shrug off these falter or poison debuffs on yourself and you can just kind of parry heavy the guy and chip him down. Other than that, Human Torch is also a solid option, because if you keep your temperature high, you will not miss, so you can kind of work around that falter with Human Torch as well. And yeah, those are pretty much like the best champions, but additionally you can kind of use any champion on this guy. If they are poison immune, even better, but even if they're not poison immune, so long as you stay aggressive, you will be fine. And it's a tricky fight. You should not expect to kind of like one-shot it, especially at first. Again, you can do much better against this guy if you learn how to evade his level 1 properly and can do it confidently, because that means you will be getting more power, actually much more power, because every time he drops a level 1, you're going to get a power bar, and you're going to get to keep it, and then you can use your special attacks, because if you push him to level 2, number 1, you get power bars less often, and number 2, he drains them anyway, so you basically play with no power. And yeah, it is a quite annoying boss. I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of footage on YouTube about how people have been doing with this guy. But my advice is don't get frustrated, learn to evade his level 1s, work around that one. It's going to make the fight so much easier. And yeah, that will pretty much do for today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya!